Welcome to episode 6 of season 2. Today we welcome Matan, Zimman, and Tuvia Sulami to discuss Yemenite Jews, a strong and enduring presence in the Gulf. Welcome Matan and Tuvia to Taking Back the Narrative podcast. Our audience will learn a great deal tonight about the absolutely fascinating story of Yemenite Jews. You know, I myself did not know anything about Jews living in Yemen until about a decade ago, when I read that Jews in Yemen are not quote unquote real Jews, but are converts. And unfortunately, there is that anti-Semitic lie out there, just like there is that longstanding lie that Ashkenaz Jews are not real Jews, but are actually Khazars. And we know that's not true. So although that lie has long been disproven, unfortunately, there are many people who still believe it. And when I did my own research about Yemenite Jews, I was very, very impressed, from business traders to feared warriors and everything in between. And I'm so glad to have this conversation in order to properly educate about actual history and the very real Jews, such as yourself, who ended up in Yemen, and the powerful story of your community. And so with that, I think we should delve into the beginning of that history. So when did Jews first leave Israel for Yemen? Was it before the destruction of the first temple period, or was it after? And did the Bar Kokhba revolts in Israel also add to Jews in Yemen?
The beginning of Yemenite Jews.
When the Jews came to Yemen after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash.
Yes, I will tell you the history of the Yemenite Jews, as we know, we understand and know in two levels: the level of the historic research, and the level of the legends, traditions of the what we told in our community. So you can choose what them. We know, or we suppose to know, that the first Jews arrived to Yemen with the Queen of Seba, Malkat Sheba, the Queen of Seba, which was in Yemen, not in Ethiopia, in Yemen. As you remember from the Bible, the queen came to Israel and meet the King Solomon. And by our legend said that she here became Jewish and returned to Yemen with delegation.
Mishlachat delegation.
With the delegation of rabbis, of officers, and the advisors. And this was the first group, let's say. But it didn't leave in the history of Yemen. It didn't suppose. You mean what I mean?
Yes.
It, in the level of legend, we don't know if it was or the first the first idea of the first group says that we belong to Judea, the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Judah, and our first ancestors arrived here 10 years before the destruction of the first temple. After the revolt of the king Yoachim. The king Yoachim make a revolt against the
Babylonians.
Babylon, and they take him with the elite of the Jews to exile in Babylon. In this event, hundreds of Jews from Judea escaped to the desert. To the desert at the
In the south.
in the south. At this period, all the eastern here, Palestine and Egypt, it was conquered by the Babylon. So the lonely place to escape, it was to the desert, to the south, and from this they wandered, moved generations to the south until they arrived to the Indian Ocean east of Yemen, on the way of the refuse, the way of the perfumes, and from Gaza to Yemen was an ancient way that the perfumes were coming from Yemen.
So the trade route.
Yes,
Yes.
they go generations to and they arrived to Yemen. By the way, I will tell you that in the Arabian Peninsula, what
The
is called
Arabian Peninsula.
Arabian
Saudi
Saudi
Arabia.
of Ayom, today, I have a problem because I'm talking also Arabic, and so more than English. So by the history, became two communities, big communities. One in Saudi of today, and the second in Yemen.
So perfect. So that's what I wanted to talk a little bit more about. So to our audience who's listening, let's explain a little bit more about Yemen. So the modern country of Yemen, what we know Yemen today, was part of southern Saudi Arabia for a long time. And before that, the southern part of Southern Arabia, all the borders were constantly changing. And there were many Jews, like you mentioned, who were living in the Hijaz, which is Mecca and Medina area of today's Saudi Arabia in ancient times. So my question to you both is, do you know if the Jews from Saudi Arabia also immigrated or integrated in Yemen, or were those communities very separate? The Jews in Saudi Arabia and the Jews in Yemen.
Yes.
Yes.
So
there were two Jewish communities in Arabian Peninsula, half a peninsula, what's called today Saudi Arabia and Yemen. Two communities. The first one, or the northern one, was in Saudi, and there were independents. By the way, all this area was pagan. Pagans in this. It was before the Islam appeared.
Before Muhammad had his revelation.
Before Muhammad. So the Jews in Arabia and the Jews in Yemen developed differently. There were connections between them, but not strong connections. For example, when Muhammad fight the Jews in Arabia, the Jews of Yemen didn't come to help them.
Okay.
You see?
I understand. So they were close geographically, but they were quite different in terms of outcomes.
Now we know that the Jew, we have here two stories. The story of the Jews in Arabia. When I am talking Arabia, I mean, of course, Saudi Arabia of today, in Arabia, and the story of the Jews in Yemen. It developed differently. And I will not enter to the story of the Jews of Arabia, which is very interesting, and it's a different chapter to talk it. But I will say only two sentences. One, it was, they were Jews like us, Jews who were Arabian in the culture and the language, but they were Jews from in the religion and all, and they have, for example, relations to the rabbis of the Mishnah. For example, in the Mishnah, it's written. By the way, the Mishnah and the rabbis who lived in the period of these communities, in the Talmud and Gemara and the Mishnah, they don't talk or write about these communities.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
But for example, they mention, by the way, for example, in the Mishnah, when we are studying Mishnah about Shabbat, there is it's written that Rabbi Yohanan, who was a big rabbi, who was received a question from Arabia, asking him if the women in Arabia or Arabic women allowed mutar, allowed to wear this
the burqa, they had covered the covering that women wear.
This cover in Saturday. They sent a question to the rabbi in Babel to ask him what if it's written, if they allowed in Shabbat, they were Jewish strong Jewish.
Strong Jewish, strong.
Yes, yes.
So they had that connection also with the homeland, and they looks like they turned to Israel for advice and for cultural connections, even being so far away.
Mm-hmm.
Is very important.
The second point that I want to say, they were independent in Arabia. They have leaders and rabbis and army, but they were not united. They were
so there were different tribes of Jews.
Yes, and Muhammad received a strong influence from them, and he says it's written in the Quran. But after he demanded at the beginning, he claimed that I am a prophet like your prophet, and I am sent by God also to the Jews. They say, no, you are sent to the nations, not to the good, not the Yud. For more than that, they say, you believe in monotheism. Are you ready to receive all the mitzvot? It's difficult to be Jewish. In order to be, yes, in order to be Jewish like us, you should receive all the hundreds of mitzvot. He says, no. You yourself say that when will come the Mashiach, with them, the mitzvot are most of them will vanish.
Will be irrelevant.
Yes, they say no. You are a mistake. First of all, you are not the Messiah. They say. And secondly, we are ready to, and we honor you that you believe in God and fight for God, but you are not a prophet for us. We have our, and he fought them, and it is a different story. I don't know.
But he was very
Yes.
offended because he was so close to the Jewish communities that it was a complete affront to him that the Jews did not want to accept his new religion.
Yes, the second community developed in Yemen.
Mhm.
In Yemen, they were more strong from the community in Arabia.
And so in Yemen, do you know in which cities Jews settled in that area? I heard about Aden or Adan and Sana'a. Often, are there other places, or were those the main cities?
היא שואלת, איזה ערים, איפה בימן, אם יש הרבה
The
יהודים
big cities.
בסנא, בעדן,
Yes,
Where the Jews lived?
Yemen, in Yemen, first of all, Yemen, the typic society there is a tribal. Till today, this is also their problem. They divided to tribes, and they are very dispersed in Yemen. There are no many cities. More of the citizens were living in villages. A few cities were in the history, like Sana'a and Ta'ez, Aden. These three was the biggest cities. When we say the big cities before 100 or 200, we mean about 40,000 or something like this. Don't think it's 500,000.
Mhm.
The other the level was the cities of less than 1,000.
Mhm.
But more the settlements in Yemen were small villages. For example, the Jews in Yemen, in the beginning of the 20th century, were dispersed
through
about 1,300 settlements.
So they lived all over Yemen, or were there in
all over Yemen.
all over? Okay.
About the aliyah, the big aliyah in 49, for example, in the big aliyah arrived to Israel about 50,000.
Mhm.
They come from 1,000 settlements.
Oh wow. Okay.
Then it means that most of them were living in small villages that even they have no minyan. You know what's the minyan?
10 men. 10 men.
In the synagogue, we need to the prayer. We need minyan. Minyan, it's 10
people.
10 people, men.
It's
men.
10 men, 10 males.
Yes.
Who receive
They mean that many thousands, hundreds of villages were very small. This is typical to the Yemenite community in Yemen. Now, what was in Yemen? The Jews in Arabia and the Jews in
Yemen.
had a priority about the local pagans. What was it? First, and I'm not talking it from the Rashik, Gazani,
Rational point,
rational
point of view.
point, from the social point of view. The Jews in Arabia, in Yemen, you know, all boy go to study, to read, and many and to write at least a few words if you need. Many of them, you know, to write more than that. Only the women, in the Jewish women, did not study a formal study. And we are talking on modern studies, the traditional study.
Right.
In the Arab society, and even in Yemen, till the 20th century, a few knew to read the Arab, and a few of the few knew writing, and now it's they make the society different. If these are know to read, more than that, it's not only to know to read. The Jews pay a lot of attention and time to mental and spiritual doing.
And we'll get all the
Studying Torah, and you are or for example, not only to Torah, all the traditional sources. This make the Jewish person higher from the pagan. Now, it's influenced the pagan. The monotheism.
Monotheism. Monotheistic belief.
Yes,
the
belief in one God was dispersed in the Arabian Peninsula by in the influence of the Jews. At the beginning, at Arabia were a few of Christian. The Christian was not strong. In Yemen, they have more influence because they had a help from Ethiopia, which is near Yemen. Ethiopia a few times conquered Yemen to help the Christians them. But the Jewish community had so great influence that in the fourth or third century, the kingdom became a Jewish kingdom.
So did they convert? Did they all convert, or was it just the king and some senior?
There is a discussion between the researchers. How was the deep the Jewish influence? does all the nation, or most of the nation, or Yemenite nation, adopted the Judaism, or only the king and the noble society? This is an discussion, but formally the kingdom was the Jew. For example, the last king, his name was Joseph, okay, Yosef. I'm translating it. Who has two, how do you call it?
Oh, but pay us.
Yes,
Yes.
its name was Yo. He was Jewish from his birth, because his parents also was Jews. No, I mean, he was not the first who adopted the Judaism. He lived in Jewish, and he was a fanatic. He was proud, and this finally caused his death. Why? At this period in Palestine, the Byzantine rulers,
The Byzantine Empire.
not only in the Byzantine Empire, especially in Palestine, the Christian was torturing the Jews,
Torturing Christians.
and they make many troubles to the Jews in Yemen. The Yemenite king has connections with the rabbis in Tiberias.
In Tuvia.
When he heard that in Palestine the Christians torture the Jews, he began to torture the Christian in his kingdom.
I read about that. That was interesting.
Yes, here in Eretz Israel, the Christian was destroying synagogues, and it was forbidden to Jewish to enter to Jerusalem. And many them. He began to make the same thing in Yemen to the Christians, to fight at them, and to
pay back for what they
Yes.
were doing. Right.
what they do, they appealed to the Caesar, the Byzantine
The Byzantine.
Caesar in Constantinople, Istanbul, Constantinople, and tell him, help us from the Jewish king. This Caesar appealed to the Ethiopian Caesar, who was a Christian, and asked him, please go help our brothers, Christian brother in Yemen. And the Ethiopian army invaded to Yemen, and there was a few battles, and at the end, the Jewish king was killed in the.
Very interesting. So I'd like to find out more about your personal family history. So having left Israel for Yemen such a long time ago, those Jews, historically speaking, the Yemenite Jews must have developed their own unique traditions. And so I would love to know your own family history. And also, how did your family end up in Yemen? Were they there since the ancient times after the destruction of the first temple, or did they arrive in a different era?
היא רוצה לדעת על ההיסטוריה של המשפחה שלך, אם עלית לארץ מימן, ועל ההיסטוריה.
I will add a few points, and after this, I will. We talked about the beginning of the community, but yet naturally, every destruction in here in Palestine, in Eretz Israel, caused many to escape to all there, and to Yemen also. For example, in the Roman period, when they destruct the second temple, many Jews who escaped from the events, terrible events, the only place they can escape is only to the desert. To the desert, and at the end is the Yemen. So all period arrived to their, and they was united with the original. We, the Yemenite community, have our Hebrew, for example, is different from the Hebrew which we are talking in Israel, and it's different from the Hebrew of the Ashkenazi. Mm-hmm. You know, in our generation, there are three the Hebrew dialects: the Ashkenazi, the Sephardic, which is in Israel, and the Yemenite. And the Yemenite dialect is the most exact dialect. What I mean, not because I'm they, for example, they expel all the letters of the Hebrew.
The Hebrew alphabet.
So the most, you're saying the most similar to the original Hebrew.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's the second, the Sephardic and Israeli, both of them were influenced from the languages which they lived near them. In Yemen, they first of all, Yemen is Semitic, and the Arabic language is familiar to the Hebrew. So it's easy to talk right Hebrew, like in the period in the Bible.
Biblical times.
So in my family, we have a tradition. For example, I heard from my father when I was small that our all the stories that we are from Judea tribe. Till too young, till today, we are from Judea. Secondly, we, especially our family, from the first exile of Joachim.
Ah, okay.
Construction of the
first, you know, for example, I said the story of Joachim in Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah,
yeah.
In the prayer of Rosh Hashanah, the Yemenites are the only the Yemenite in the synagogue. After we תוקעים השופר in
The
the
shofar.
the
Yeah,
shofar.
got the shofar.
The rabbi announced. Here you heard the shofar. We let be that God will give us that we will hear in the future when Messiah will come, that we will hear the voice of the shofar of the Messiah, which is our king, son of Yoachim ben David.
Wow. Okay.
Only
Very long history there.
only the Yemenite, and till today in Rosh Hashanah, we announce our belief in our king Yoachim that the Messiah will be from his. And I was when I was a child, my father, who was a rabbi, was talking all this story. We lived in Yemen. There are different, like many community, Jewish community, there is differences between the districts in Yemen. Also between the Arab. If you know, in Yemen there is now a war.
Right.
The war is between tribes and between districts. The Jewish community was divided like for example, there is south of Yemen and north of Yemen. North of Yemen is the center of them is Sana'a, and the south is Taiz and Aden. Now there is a difference between them in language, for example. In the north is Arabic dialect, near the Saudi dialect or the Bedouin dialect. In the south, it's different. It's also between the Jewish communities. The dialect of Sana'a is different from the dialect of the south. For example, my dialect, I am from the district of Taiz. Our language, it's mean when we read in the Torah, we read it differently. I will understand what they am reading, and we are reading in the same book. But the spelling of it is different.
Yes.
Now,
The grammatical way of.
yes. Now, our family lived in South Yemen in the district of Taiz. The center of this was an area which his name is Sharab. Sharab is the second district in Yemen. It's different from Sana'a. Sana'a is about two-thirds.
2/3 of the.
And Taiz and the south, and then there are differences. We said in the language, even in the halakha.
In halacha.
For example, in Sana'a they were believing in the Rambam.
Okay.
The Rambam, first of all, the Rambam. In our, no, we are like the Spanish, the Sephardic, and we are about Caro and the Shulchan Aruch. You see, it's different. And but the customs are familiar.
So they're the same. And so how were the relations, would you say, between Muslims and Jews in Yemen? Was there dimitude, was there second-class citizenship? And but overall, like, how would you describe your family's experience in Yemen throughout the centuries before the expulsion?
היא שואלת, אז איך הקישור בערבים ויהודים בימן? אז היהודים הם
איך
לא...
היחסים היו?
כן, איך היחסים היו, וגם
היו-
של החיים של המשפחה שלך, גם.
אני אגיד, my family, I told you, was living in this area, and they began to לעלות לארץ ישראל, to immigrate to Israel in 1925, after the first
World War I.
They began, they wanted to immigrate to Israel before the first
For the Second World
Yes,
War. And,
but and they come to Israel, to Tel Aviv area. Yes, now in Yemen there was a problem. What was the problem? In 628, Muhammad wanted to conquer Yemen, but he knew that in Yemen there is a great Jewish community and strong. Even they lost their kingdom, but they were strong. He sent
messenger.
a messenger to the rabbis of the Jews and said, I have a suggestion. I am meaning to conquer Yemen in order to enter them to Islam. I don't want to fight you like I fought your brothers in my area.
In Arabia.
In Arabia. I suggest, without a fight, you will recognize in our rule on Yemen, and you will not interfere to our invasion to Yemen and bringing all the pagans to Islam. And I will give you I will
Proposition.
yes.
Proposition.
And I will do with you an agreement.
Compromise.
About the agreement, you are recognizing in Islam, not adopting Islam, recognizing in the Islamic rule in Yemen, and give up any political aspiration in Yemen, because he knew that there were a Jewish kingdom. He said, no, in Yemen, you have no political aspiration. And I will go on attempts to convince Jews to adopt Islam, but not enforce them. I will convince them. You are not allowed to prevent any one of them to adopt Islam.
I see.
Now, will be free of taxes, but one tax, which is a few pounds for a person.
Per person.
Was that the Jizra tax? Was that the protection tax?
Yes.
Protection tax.
Yes. Not only this, but you are not allowed allowed it to have agriculture lands. No,
Farmlands, you can do that, they're not.
you may have a possession in a private house, not private, because this is only to Muslims.
Mhm.
You are not allowed to be armed. To be armed, because it's only to Muslims. You are not allowed to build new synagogues in Yemen. Only the synagogues were in when Islam arrived. You are not allowed to hire a house higher from the Muslim neighbor. It's a problem.
Of course.
You are not allowed to serve at the army. You are a citizen from the
Lower class.
The lower class citizens.
a little about the slaves.
Mhm.
You are not allowed to wear beautiful dresses in public area. In your house, it's your and I all this, and I promise you, if you recognize and receive all this, I promise you security of your
Protection, you'll be protected.
Your
you'll be
safety.
protected.
Your safety.
yes, and your lives, okay, and free of your religion,
Freedom of religion.
of three things. Later, at the 15th century, they add a new, we call it Gzera, bad law, saying that if a Jewish man died and he has children which are no mature, the children should be taken to the authorities and will be a Muslim,
Mhm.
the
So-
orphan. If
so-
the men, not women, if the mother die and the father
He's still alive.
is living, it's okay. But if the father died, even if the mother is alive, the small children are taken, and to
They're
those a terrible law. Why? Because Yemen was very primitive until our days. Every day people may die, and there is no family which has no orphaned children, and it was a terrible.
And it was a way for them to convert.
Now-
obviously, Jews.
Now, and the relations between the Muslim and the Jewish were very complicated.
Mhm.
First of all, the Jewish answer to Muhammad, we agree. We agree. Why we agree? Because this is the meaning of galut. You know what galut?
Of course.
The diaspora. The
To
diaspora.
be in
Diaspora.
diaspora. We are not supposed to, in the diaspora, to enjoy and to have a kingdom. We are not supposed. So what you suggest, it's okay. It's fit to the life in diaspora. We are not supposed to enjoy in diaspora, and they received it. But it was a very difficult life in Yemen. Now, what helped to the Jews? the Arab citizens supposed working in, all the hand crafts,
manual labor.
manual. No, we are noble. Only the
Noblemen.
Jews,
Only the
Only
Jews should be
the
working
Jews.
those jobs.
all the manual what?
Manual labor.
Labors, most of them was in the Jewish hands.
Okay. Mhm.
The carpenter and the builder and the smith
Blacksmiths, the
Okay.
blacksmith.
was Jewish. Now, the Muslim feel we are noble. They are serving us.
There are
But
servants.
this created the special situation that the Arabic economics was depend
They relied on the Jewish
They were
community.
dependent
the
on
Arabic.
the Jews.
in the Jewish.
On the
For example, a village. If they have no a Jewish worker, they cannot work. Who will fix all the
All the problems, right? Like who's going to fix
Problem.
the houses and the
now?
plumbing?
And it created a special situation that the Arabs were dependent in the Jews, and the Jews depend in the Arab because all their parnassa, how do you say parnassa?
Like work, like all their work.
The
Their-
Jewish, all their
All their
where-
livelihood, like how to make money. How to
Livelihood.
make-
where
How to make a life.
the Jewish were depend in the Muslim, and the Muslim depend in the.
That's interesting. Maybe that was one of the reasons
Now,
Yemen did not want to get rid of the Jews.
now
Yeah.
there were no, they were no a Muslim settlement which has no near it a Jewish village or a neighborhood in it. Generally, the Jewish preferred to be different in a different security or in a different village, not to live with the Muslim. And the Muslim also didn't want the Jewish with them. So it was mutual.
They had to live near them.
The relations was very, very complicated. The fanatic Muslims hated the Jewish,
Mhm.
hated them. If a Jewish touch a Muslim, if another he suppose he may hit him because he make him tameh.
It's humiliation,
Yes.
degrading.
It was considered dirt, like Jews were
Example,
considered
If a
dirty.
Jewish,
We're
if a
considered
Jewish,
untouchables,
if
basically.
a Jewish touched his food,
His food
it was a tameh.
was contaminated.
More than that, in all the Islam, the Muslims eat Jewish shchita. For example, in the United States, the Muslim search where is
Kosher.
Jewish.
Kosher restaurant.
In Yemen, no, the Muslims don't eat from Jewish shchita
Interesting.
because they are fanatic. It was very, but it was complicated. In the villages, most of the Arab citizens very honored the Jewish,
Mhm.
and at least the Jewish with their neighbors. Why? Because in the villages, the Arab are organized in tribes, and they hated the Jews who lived in their tribe. The attitude treated them like our tribe.
Mhm.
You see what I mean?
They were
And-
treated equally.
And this depend on the Jews.
So there was a difference, you said, between the bigger settlements
Yes.
and the villages.
You see, that's mean that the more of the Jews in Yemen had two kinds of defense.
Mhm.
One, the Islamic defense of Muhammad about the agreement, and the second is the tribal defense. The tribes was defending at least on the Jews of him. Now, the Jews, for example, if there were a war in Yemen between tribes, the Jews are not supposed to be invented. The Jews are neutral. It was forbidden to one of the sides to hurt the Jews. Why? Because Jews are not fighters. They are not innovative. This depended on the Jews.
So let me ask a question about the Jewish fighters. So a few years ago, I read about the Habani Yemenite warriors. So typically there were Jews known for their strength and their height. They were very tall. And so I'd read that the Habani tribe fought with the Arabs, like alongside the Arabs, and they protected imams and sheikhs, and they were given protection against the second class status, against simitude. Could you tell us a little bit more about them if you know, and do you know of other Jewish groups in Yemen who were also warriors, or were they the only group? And I ask that because, there's a famous Jewish explorer in the Middle Ages, Benjamin of Tudela, and he said he came to Yemen to search for Jews in the Middle Ages, and he came across Jews fighting alongside Arabs and who were given respect. They could live, in the same size homes as the Arabs. So I'm wondering if that was unique to only that one group of Jews, or were there other Jewish warriors around Yemen?
What's the question?
شغلة יש לוחמים מהחיבני. היא שואלת אם יש עוד קבוצות.
The Habanic Jews are different in their appearance. You remember, they have a long hair.
Long hair, yeah.
If no, I will send you pictures of them.
Oh, I have pictures. Yeah, they protected the king of Jordan too.
They, for example, they were not cutting their hairs. The men and the women, and this person. But in their culture, they are other Jews in Yemen, the same reading and dialects. In the and their appearance is different because it was the far district on the Indian Ocean, far, the part of Yemen, but they were they also lives in tribal society there. And generally, also there, the Muslim there was defending also on them. They there, for example, supposed to be allowed to be armed. By the way, in the north of Yemen also, Azor Haidan. You heard this name? Azor Haidan. Also they were allowed to take a rifle or something. Why? Because their tribe allowed them.
Okay.
Not the king of Yemen. In Sinai, a Jew will not dare to go with a knife in Sinai. But there, it's so you the tribal influence. The tribal influence generally depend on the Jews. This is I forgot to tell you something very interesting. When Muhammad make the agreement with the Jews, there was a question, until what this agreement? And the agreement was, until will come our Messiah, until will come our redemption. And in Islam and Muhammad believe that will come a Jewish Messiah and will and God will forgive the Jews, and will the Messiah will take them back to Palestine. Really, only in the modern Islam and fanatic Islam, they deny it.
Right.
They say, why you the Jew force the Bible? They say they blame us that our Bible today is not the Bible, the ancient one.
But meanwhile, in Quran, it
Well,
says there is
when we
Israel.
say them, but in the Quran it's written that Muhammad say that God chose the Bnei Israel nation.
We are God's chosen.
Say yes, but when we make mistake and God became angry at you, he throw you from Eretz Israel. We said yes, but he said, when you will come back and I will return you. Muhammad himself. And here I wanted to tell you something very important. You know that in May 49, the king of Yemen, the Imam Ahmad, announced that every Jewish citizen of Yemen is allowed to go out of Yemen and to go where he wanted to go, and it was clear that he may go to Israel. More than that, he accepted that all of them will leave Yemen, and he announced that every Muslim that will hurt or prevent a Jewish to leave his place will have problems with me.
Mhm.
Judicial
Right.
call. Many
Yes.
Muslims do.
And he knew that Israel arranging airplanes from Aden. You remember the Aliyah, this Aliyah.
That was that called Operation
Oh.
Magic Carpet?
I think so, in 1940, in Operate Mipsa Magic Carpet by 49.
Yes, I'm talking about it. He only when he announced it began the great Aliyah of the carpet, magic carpet, and all the Jews lived. He make a few conditions. First of all, that everyone, the men, will pay his
Taxes.
You remember it's little coins. Second, that he will pay all his debts to.
Debts in order to be
Third,
permitted to leave.
that he will finish the depths of Muslim to him, not to and if he has the house or
Property.
property, he has to buy it and bring me and bring papers that he buy it.
Documentation.
Why? That will come after a generation or something and say that
This was mine.
I treated you not good.
Absolutely. So
Now-
we're
Just a
nearing.
moment.
So we're
In
nearing.
the- in that period, the Arabic League, if you remember, Israel was only finished the war of 48.
War of Independence.
2 months before it, he await until the war was finished. When the war was finished, we announced. When the Arabic League, Arabic states come in there, you told them, you are crazy. We want to destroy Israel and prevent me from her migration, and you let your Jewish. He answered them he said, in Yemen, he's not a real king.
Proxy, he's a
It's
proxy
Imam.
king.
It's Imam. He's the great priest of the Muslim. He's a religious leader. He's not a king. He
Imam.
said, I am a Muslim leader. I am son of Muhammad. I am responsible to greatment of Muhammad with the Jews. And he promised them, when will come the redemption, I should let them go. And I am Muslim, real Muslim. And I don't care what you are talking. This
That's interesting because that's not really, shared about. And so speaking of Yemen, do you see Yemen ever establishing a relationship with Israel once the Houthis are gone, Iran falls, the mullahs? Do you see them ever joining the Abraham Accords in the future?
what you said.
היא שואלת אז אם כמו בחריין ומצרים, ירדן ו-United Arab Emirates, עם ימן יש דיפלומטיה עם ישראל.
לא.
כמו...
The Yemen, especially today, who ruled in the few last hundreds in Yemen, it was the Zaidi movement. The Zaidi movement is a Shi'i movement. They are very fanatic anti-Jewish.
So it's not just the Houthis, there are other fanatics there, correct?
They are different. Saudi is a Sunnic, if you know. They in Yemen, north of Yemen, especially who ruled all Yemen, they are Zaidic. So all Yemen is anti-Israel.
Well, now, do you see them ever, like the Houthis are very radical as well. Do you see them, like they're going to be defeated eventually, just like eventually Iran, the mullahs are going to be gone. Do you see in the future, not now, but in the future, the population in Yemen being more open to having relationship?
Let's say so. We said now, there is a war in Yemen. The war is between the Zaidi, which is Shiite, and they are connected in Iran. and against the Sunnic in south of Yemen, which is more normal, let's say. With those, maybe will be something. For example, in August, 88 August, there will be a conference in London, which we are taking part in it. We are the Yemenite organization.
Organizing the conference in
We,
London.
we are taking part in this conference, which is arranged with the rulers of Aden, which were Yemenite. But this south of Yemen, they are more. They are in war against the north of Yemen, so they are looking for sympathy and help with America and Israel. So maybe there will be, but with the north of Yemen, especially, which their connection with Iran were now stronger than the period of the Imam.
Right.
The Imam, even he was Shiite, he had no connections with Iran. He hated them. But now they, I, for example, my family, and I was born here in Israel, in Tel Aviv. My family immigrated to Israel. I told you, they began in 1925, 6, and like this. We came from an area which were Zaydik inhabitants. So, but they treated us okay, not they were not there in this period. Now, when I entered to the internet, I saw that now they taking part in the war with the Zaydik, of course. So they were more fanatic. This is
very interesting. So you mentioned that your family came over in 1925, and there were Yemenite Jews returning back from 1881. They settled in what is now called Silwan. So overall, how would you say that Yemenite Jewish culture shaped Israel? And if so, in which ways?
She's asking, how did Yemenite culture influence Israeli culture in present day? First.
I've told you that the Jewish nation today, there are a few communities. In big, there is the Ashkenazi or European, if you want, which include the American. And there is the Sephardic or the Oriental, and there is the Yemenite. If you were, there is Ethiopian, which is they different in the cultures. Now, but
or how specifically did because there's lots of Mizrahi communities.
I will explain.
But the Yemenite specifically.
I will explain. What let's say so. Today, it's vanishing. It's why? Because there is influences, mutual influences. First of all, the majority and living with the majority influence us in many things we are influenced. But yet, I am, for example, today my age is 84, and I was born here. But I am Israeli, but in many things I feel and behave like Yemenite. Even my children, there are something that says no. Here we are Yemenite. For example, first of all, my praying in gay synagogue, in synagogue in Yemenite language. Behave customs. If you will come in the base, it's common to all the communities, but it's different. For example, if you come in Pesach, let's say there Pesach, Passover.
Pesach.
In many things it's different, but it's common. It's Jewish. Music, the Yemenite very strong in music. In Yemen, the Jews have a different music from the Arab their neighbors. Of course, there are common melodies or a few common poems or something. But it's good. For example, this poetry of the men in Yemen, it's different from the poetry of the women.
Interesting.
You know it? You know it?
No, I've never heard of it.
In Yemen, Jewish of Yemen, the men, their poetry and music different from the culture and poetry of the women. The poetry of the women is common with the Arab.
Mhm.
First of all, for example, it is only in Arabic, and the subject there is lyric, and the personal feelings and the poetry of the men is different. They have, first of all, it's written. The poetry of the women, it's by heart, it's not written. The poetry of the men is in Hebrew, most of it in Hebrew, and Arabic and Aramaic also. Now, also the Arabic poetry is not written in Arabic letters, in Hebrew letters. So if Arab person want to read it, he can't read it. He needs that somebody will read it for him. The poetry of the men is not lyric. It don't bother with all the personal feelings of the. Only in the national and public subjects. The redemption, the exile, the history, the Torah, the stories of the Bible. Yes, not, for example, Shabazi, if you heard his name, Shabazi was the greatest, our poet. He wrote about 900 poems.
Wow.
You will
Impressive.
not, yes, he one of the greatest Jewish poets, not only Yemenite. 900 poems, not a small poet, very complicated poet. If you will find a few hints about a personal subject, you will be, we will not find one poem which talking about himself.
You
You
believe
see?
that? You believe that's the woman?
Yes. So it's different. Now, for example, in the music, we have our music. If you will come to a Yemenite event, Hatuna or the
Wedding.
Hatuna Temanit, we dance, you know, the Yemenite dies. And, this influenced the Israeli dancing system. It's known that the Yemenite step, you recognize this Yemenite step. Now it's basic part of the Israeli dancing.
It's so beautiful
It's
that he
good.
was able to
Yes,
influence
yes.
on such a grand scale.
Also music and all this. So when we sure we feel in many times many things we influenced and received the influence in the kitchen, for example.
Of course, and, it's food from Yemen. It's from food
There are,
Yemen.
for example,
Famous.
the Jahnun and the Kubana, you know, this
I tried it in Machne Yehuda.
this is a Yemenite Jewish איך אומרים, בישול, cooking of Shabbat. Shabbat. For example, the Arab the Yemenite Arab they didn't recognize it.
Oh.
Why? They did it. I met before I was in 29, no, 18. I was in United States and I met a Yemenite Arab professor, which is from my area in Yemen. And we talked, and I asked him about our area, and I asked him about Jahnun.
He didn't know.
He didn't know what I'm talking about because it was a Jewish. Now, every hotel, you will come in Saturday. It's also Cubana. There is a hotel that we are going, Israeli hotel, that we run there Saturday, that we take about 100 rooms. They prepare for us a Yemenite soup and hilbe. You know what's hilbe? And jahnun and the cooker is not Yemenite. So there is for example, you will not believe. For example, find as a researcher our influences in the Ashkenazi or Israeli behavior of the young generation.
I agree to that. I see a difference, even my generation as well. We appreciate
for
more.
example, I remember my friends, Israeli Ashkenazi, when we were small. They were different from the Arab, the Ashkenazi today. They were איך אומרים, יבש כזה, ככה.
Dry, יבש.
Yes,
Boring.
not ascetic. Not ascetic. If you meet somebody, only rarely we will give you a hand. You will not see what the Israeli today, when they meet, even in the Himalaya, Oh, my brother, my grandfather. It was not before a generation when I call them.
So they were more reserved.
Yes, now they behave and received from us, from the Yemenite and the Oriental, all the
All the exuberance of
yes,
being Israeli, of being
it's,
of how
it's in, you know, even in the political last events in the few months, all the demonstrations, I find there many behaviors that I say, wow, this is a revolution in the Ashkenazi behavior.
Mhm.
They were not, they was not behaving so. When
They look so boisterously.
no,
Boisterous
it's new.
bragging.
It's new.
Mhm.
You know, I said to myself, they were when we were when I was young, the Ashkenazi leaders and were warning themselves, be careful that we will not Levantinize. You will that we will not will be Levantine like the Orientals. All what happened in the last year, it's the Levant in his pure Levantism.
And the few, yeah, sure, it's like Middle Eastern because when
Yes.
you think Israel's
Not,
a Middle Eastern
it's
country.
not Israeli, classic Israeli
Like
behavior.
Syria and other countries.
Yeah,
It's
and that makes
crazy.
sense. Yeah.
Iraq,
It's
Syria,
crazy.
Lebanon.
You see professors behave like crazy without connection to pay fix. It's crazy. And I am talking it not from the point of view of idea, political. I don't care. I say, God save us. It's this frightening me more than all this. You see,
I agree with you on that, but it is interesting, right?
it's terrible. It's terrible. You see, I see, but let's say newspapers and all. There is no one who is professional. Everyone, left, right, have an agenda and they lost the professional.
In America too.
You
Same thing.
see doctors from the hospitals. They also lost their head and
Interesting. But
I apologize.
it's okay.
But
Unfortunately, we do have a time constraint. So I want to
I
conclude.
entered to this subject by the question about influences.
Oh, right. No, and it's a lot,
Complete Levantinizing.
which is good, right? Like, we have to make sure that Israel returns back to being Middle Eastern, which it is. So I want to say thank you so much to you, Tuvia, and to Matan for your time. Thank you so much for shedding a lot of light and history on the Yemenite Jewish community and all of the fascinating aspects of it, from music and culture and history, and the strength it took to remain cohesive in such turbulent times throughout history. So I thank you so much. I know I learned a lot. I'm very sure that the audience will learn a great deal as well. And I want to say thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time. אני רוצה להגיד תודה רבה של הזמן שלך לדבר על ההיסטוריה של היהודים
אין בעיה.
בימן.
If you will give me your mail, I can send you a few.
Absolutely. And we can add any links, any articles, anything else you may have.
I
to
have
the
your email.
recording.
I have, יש לי מייל.
אז אני אעביר לך.
אני
I will give you. First of all, if you want a few pictures, interesting,
Absolutely.
and a few in English essays, which yes, I can give you if you want. You will meet here.
Yeah, when I come to I plan on when I come to the States in August, I can give you her email address as well.
And we'll stay connected.
Maybe I will find here.
What?
I have also a book in English about all the subjects we talked about.
Perfect.
You're
Matan,
welcome.
you can send me a link as well, and we can share that
course.
with the audience. Okay, so
Absolutely.
have a great rest of your night, and thank you so much again, both of you.
Of course. Thank you very much as well.
Welcome to Israel. I have a brother in Texas.
Oh, nice. I love Texas. One of my favorite states. Okay, have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Lorraine.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you so much.